Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. I'm here for a Friday Reads video with
Hi, I'm Joel.
and Teddy. They are joining just for the beginning because we wanted to say Merry Christmas
And Happy New Year.
and a Happy New Year, since this is going to be the last Friday Reads before the end of the year probably. We might do a December wrap-up in place of
Yeah.
a Friday Reads next week. And Teddy, you can see, has a ball and his own little Santa hat that says Good Doggy. So, we just wanted to get them in here. And if you don't celebrate the holidays, I apologize. Ignore all of this.
Yeah. So happy holidays with whatever you celebrate.
Yeah,
And thank you.
exactly. All right. So we're going to let them go and I'll get back to the rest of the Friday Reads. All right, here we go. We're ready for a Friday Reads where I wrap up the week in reading and talk about any bookish things or just anything interesting that happened during the week. If you're only interested in the Friday Reads section, there will be a timestamp down below so you can jump to that portion of the video. And I tried to get Teddy to come join me in the chair, but Joel had to leave to run some errands, just some stuff that we need done before the weekend. I'm filming this on Friday. And Teddy is doing the sad dog at the window, wondering where Daddy went. So he needs to work through those feelings. So I figure at least you got to see him in the intro. And I decided to keep the hat on because why not? It's festive, and this is really my only chance to wear it because I will have a video that will post on Monday, and Monday happens to be Christmas Day. But I don't want to make a big deal about it being Christmas Day in that video because there are people who don't celebrate Christmas, and also the internet is kind of weird on time. The fact that it's going to be posting on Christmas only really matters if you watch it on Christmas. So this is my only chance to make a big deal about it and say happy holidays to you. So it's been an interesting reading week. We'll get into that in the Friday Reads portion of the video. I have finished 2 books, and I technically finished 3. We'll talk about the technically. And I'm so close to being done with another one. And again, we'll talk about that when we do the actual Friday Reads portion of the video. I'm trying to think if anything else has happened during the week. And not really, actually. I'm getting ready to begin end of year stuff. I have next week off from work. And what the air quotes mean is that basically, and for my job, we don't really have much to do. We work with clients who are kind of all over the country, and they're taking the week off. So there isn't really much for us to do anyway. So we pretty much always get the week off, but we have to watch email. And if something happens, we need to respond to it. So far, nothing has ever happened, but there's always the possibility. So, we'll see how that goes. But I'm technically supposed to be off for next week. And we're starting to think about wrapping up the year, and I have been thinking about, because I don't really want to be filming content while I have this time off, and Joel is technically working as well, but there's not gonna be a whole lot for him to do. So I'd rather have time with him and Teddy. So I have actually filmed videos already. I'm filming this on Friday. Yesterday, on Thursday, I filmed 2 videos, one for Monday and one for Thursday. And then next week, we'll probably do a December reading wrap-up in place of a Friday Reads next week. And then we'll be into January. And I have like a whole plan. I used to have it written out in a notepad, but I translated it onto my laptop so I can edit it and move things around a little more easily. Because I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I am having sinus surgery in the middle of January. So I had to try to create like a plan for how everything is going to go, because in January I have a lot of like wrap up things for 2023, looking ahead at 2024 things. And yeah, so I wanted to have a plan. So actually most of my week was spent wrapping up a bunch of things for work and thinking ahead for what I can do. Because now that I have next week filmed, I want to enjoy some time with Joel and Teddy and not have to think about YouTube too much. Although I did, spoiler for when we get to the Friday Reads, I finished The Color Purple and I need to work on my Pulitzer Prize deep dive. I have what I want to say up here. I just need to work the details a little bit. So I need to figure out how that's going to work, and maybe I'll slip it in if I can. But point just being, I am trying to think ahead and plan. So when it gets to January, I can film ahead whenever possible And then when I have my surgery, it's going to take about a week to recover from it. I have a deviated septum, and I have been living with this since I was in 3rd grade, and I'm tired of living with it. Go figure. So it'll be about a week recovery, possibly more. But so I'm trying to plan for things that I can have for that week. Joel might help me with something. Stay tuned. Okay, here's your Teddy fix, because Editing Greg realized he forgot to mention something, which is that the Montana Book Company Reading Challenge for this year is going to be ending on December 30th. I'll have a link to my challenge that I created on Storygraph in the description box down below. If you are participating, make sure you print your form and get it to Montana Book Company, either in person if you're there, or bye Teddy, or by emailing it to them. I believe the deadline is December 30th. It will say in the challenge, but I just wanted to make sure I got that in case you are participating. Don't forget. Anyway, that's pretty much everything that has gone on this week. I have a big head, so this hat keeps like riding up. It's not, I wear this when I put the lights on the tree, and by the end of the day, I have a headache from it. It's, you don't need to know about my gigantic head. Anyway, let's move into the actual Friday Reads portion of the video. As I said, I finished 1, 2, 3 books, and the first one I finished was actually an audio that Joel and I listened to on our way to Helena and back, because we went there last Saturday. And that is How to Be a Good Creature, a memoir in 13 animals by Cy Montgomery. If you follow along, you know I've been on a huge Cy Montgomery kick. I read The Soul of an Octopus last year, maybe, and really loved it. And in my last Friday Reads, I talked about Of Time and Turtles, which I just love. It's so good. It's so good. And I'm on a kick. I want to read The Hummingbird's Gift, but Joel has already listened to that. So we figured we'd cram in another short Cy Montgomery book. And, you know, this was it. And just like all of the others, it is really, it shows a great curiosity about the world, shows a lot of empathy and understanding, and also a sort of quest to understand the world a little bit better. And I love all of those qualities in Cy Montgomery's writing. She has become an author that I would just love to get coffee with and talk to, because she's a fascinating person, and she's had a really interesting life. And this book is probably as close to a memoir as we're really going to get, although she does talk about her life in her books, and I haven't read like The Good Pig, which was one of her early books, so maybe there's a little bit more in there. But she talks about her childhood, because these are her relationship with animals, and it's not like a pure one-to-one thing where each chapter is just one animal and her. Other animals can come into the equation during that section. But basically, like, the first chapter is about the dog that she had when she was a kid, Molly. And then the second chapter is about 3 emus that she observed while she was doing a research study, and how they activated a lot of the lessons that she had learned from Molly and made her realize that this was the kind of, she had been a journalist, and that she wanted to really focus in on animals and write about them and their experiences and how they interact with humans. And it's really fascinating from that perspective. And I loved it a great deal. I've become a huge Cy Montgomery fan, so I'm glad we managed to cram it in. The physical book is beautiful. We actually saw it at Montana Book Company when we were there on Saturday, because we kind of stopped in. And I left it on the shelf, went and talked to Joel, because they also had a copy of The Soul of an Octopus. And we were saying, do we want to get both? Do we want to get one? And we finally said, let's just get both of them. And we walked back to the shelf, and as we were reaching for it, an employee came over and pulled How to Be a Good Creature off the shelf and handed it to a customer and told them about it, and ended up hand selling it to the customer. And they kind of came over later and they were like, I'm sorry, I saw you approaching the shelf. You weren't looking for that, were you? And we said, we were. But it's totally fine, because we can get The Soul of an Octopus, and I would rather you give it to that person and let them purchase it, because, we'll be back. So, but it was just a really funny coincidence. So the physical book is beautiful, just like with any Cy Montgomery book. The physical books are absolutely beautiful. However, I like to read them by audio, because Cy Montgomery has such a great voice for this. My hat has ridden up again. But so anyway, that was the first book that I finished, and I just am totally in awe of Cy Montgomery. Joel wants to read a lot more of her books next year, and I might do the same, because I'm just really fascinated with her. The next book that I finished was The Color Purple, and I had made a lot of progress on this in my last Friday Reads video, and I'm going to save a lot of my thoughts for the Pulitzer Prize deep dive. I admit I don't know when that will be, because I'm trying to take as much time from filming, preparing, and all of that stuff off as possible next week. And because I have what I want to say in my head, but I haven't put it down anywhere or like finessed it a little bit, I don't know if I'll get a deep dive posted until January. We'll see how everything goes. I would love to get one done today, but we'll see how that goes. And I'm going to save a lot of my thoughts for that. I had read this before and I really liked it. I still really liked it. There are going to be interesting conversations to have, and I'm hoping to see the film adaptation, which comes out on Christmas Day, of the musical adaptation. And I'm also hoping to rewatch the 1985 adaptation of the novel. And maybe, if all goes well, I can cram in a video about like a book to movie comparison, maybe for both. Kind of like I did a Little Women, where I compared the 1994 film adaptation and the 2019 one. I'll link that down below. So maybe it would be something kind of like that, because it would be interesting to see how they take this from the page and put it to the screen. And I did still like the book a great deal. And you know, I've talked about Alice Walker. And I think a big portion of the deep dive is going to actually end up focusing on Alice Walker and this relationship to problematic authors. Because so often people say you have to separate the art from the artist. And in those are technically in instances where you really can't. And I don't want to really get into it too much now. But there's an interesting discussion that will be had with this book as part of that deep dive. I'm going to save a lot of it for that, but I did finish it this week, and yeah, I think I feel safe saying you knew I loved this because I had already read it before and talked about it, and I did still enjoy it a lot. So that was the next book that I read. Here's the technicality. I was looking at stuff for year end, and as it stands right now, there are only 2 books that I have DNF'd, and there was one that was sort of hanging in limbo. By the way, with the volume of books that I have read, only having 2 that I DNF'd is really good. The one that was in limbo was Stone Butch Blues by Leslie Feinberg. And I don't want this to be a DNF. I had started reading this in June as part of the Queer TBR tackle, and I had to put it down because there are a lot of triggers in this book. This book really deals with sexual assault, violence, hate crimes, all of those things. And it was really triggering a stress response, especially with what was going on in life at the time. You know, we had just gotten back home after wrapping up. Jamie, the dog that we lost in August, had just wrapped up radiation treatments for a nasal tumor. And so I was already stressed, and this book was like triggering a lot of that when we got home. So I had to say, I can't do this right now. I put it down. But I didn't want it to be a DNF. So my plan was, when I finished The Color Purple, I picked this up and I kind of tested the waters a little bit. I think I read about 5 pages and was really still feeling like I just am resisting this book right now because of the content. And when I say because of the content, I mean the content warnings, the triggers. The triggers were still like elevating my pulse a little bit, even though in those 5 pages, nothing bad was happening. But it just was reminding me of the stuff that had already happened and that was probably going to end up happening again. Look at this hat, just not behaving at all. It's definitely on the naughty list. So what I did is I kind of I skim read the rest of the book, which was 150 pages, I think. So I'm counting it as something I read. But I didn't do the last 150 pages of this book justice. And I know that. So I just don't feel like it would be fair to this book for it to be a DNF, because I feel like that implies like it wasn't good and I just didn't want to finish it. And that's not it at all. So I'm not counting it as a DNF, but I feel bad counting it as something that I read, because I definitely didn't really absorb a lot of the stuff that happened in the last part. And the last part is where a lot of the big thematic messaging comes in that sort of play about gender. The protagonist starts taking hormones and then detransitions a little bit. Like there's a lot in that last 150 pages that I didn't properly absorb. So my plan is that I'm not counting it as a DNF now, but I am also going to try to hold myself accountable for some time over the next few years when I'm not feeling stressed by the triggers that this book has. I want to pick it up again, and maybe I'll go back to the beginning and just start over, because I feel guilty counting this as something that I read, but I just don't think it would be... It's not an intentional DNF, although it kind of is, because I'm choosing not to have grappled with the trauma and the triggers in the last part of the book, having already waded through the first half. So it's something that I'll revisit later. It's weird. These distinctions are arbitrary. Like, if I didn't have a YouTube channel, I probably wouldn't care about it counting as a DNF. But I just don't want to have to talk about this book in these terms, because it connotes that there was something about the book that I didn't like, to me, and that's not the case at all. So I probably could have just left it. And as it stands, it's an asterisk either way. If I count it as a book that I read, there's an asterisk. And if I DNF it, there's an asterisk. So really, it was kind of one of those situations where you can't win either way, no matter what you do. But so for now, at least, I'm counting it as a read. And I appreciate what this book had to say. And if you're unfamiliar, Stone Butch Blues is a classic queer book. Grapples with gender a lot, and sexual identity as well, because the gender identity ties into the sexual identity. It grapples with a lot of those things, and it was an early book to do that. It was published in 1993, I want to say. And the really interesting thing about this book is that Leslie Feinberg wanted it to be available to everyone. So you can actually download a free PDF of this book from Leslie Feinberg's website. Leslie Feinberg has passed away at this point, but they wanted it to be available to anyone who would want to read it, regardless of whether or not they can afford a book. Or you can do a print-on-demand version. There is a printer that sells it at cost, so they don't actually make a profit on it. And I went the print-on-demand route because I kind of wanted to have it on my shelf, since it is a legendary queer book. But you can also just go to Leslie Feinberg's website, Google it, and you can find a PDF of this for free online. If you're willing to get past the triggers, just know that those are out there. So that's the situation with Stone Butch Blues. Now, what do I have ongoing? I am so close. You know, this is ridiculous at this point, but I'm so close to being finished with Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant by Ann Tyler. And if you follow along, you've seen some videos where I mentioned I don't do my best books of the year until the year is over. And this really proves the point. And actually, Of Time and Turtles proves the point. Right at the end of the year, I read 2 books that are absolutely going to crack into my top 10. And if I had already filmed my best books video, these would be kind of in limbo. Like, what do I keep these until a year from now? So it's kind of shade on people who do their best books of the year list this early. But, you know, if that's what you do, it's fine. It's not for me. Because to me, it's not over until it's over. And if I had already closed my best books of the year, I would be missing this. Now, the tricky thing is I'm listening to this on audio, and I have 40 minutes left. So I can't really say for sure, and a lot is going to depend on how those last 40 minutes go, because that's the closing of the book. It's going to be the tying up of all the thematic material that has been laid out. I really don't think this book is going to fall on its face in the last 40 minutes. Like, this is going to be in my top 10. The question is where it's going to be in the top 10. If it really lands, it's going to go high. We'll see. But this is a fantastic, fantastic book. Ann Tyler is an author that I have been really needing to revisit for a long time, because when I was in my early 20s somewhere, I read Breathing Lessons because it was a book that I talked in my Pulitzer deep dive on Interpreter of Maladies that when I latched onto the Pulitzer Prize as a tool for book discovery, and I knew it was like a quality mark of a book. I'll link that video down below as well. I saw Breathing Lessons, and it had that little line on it, winner of the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. So I read it. I just really didn't like it. To me, it was just a book about an older couple bickering for the entire length of it. And I think if I revisited it now, I would see a lot more nuance and emotion going on under the surface that I just didn't appreciate at 20, 21, 22, however old I was when I first read that book. So I resisted Ann Tyler for a long time, and anytime somebody mentioned one of her books, I kind of inwardly rolled my eyes because I hadn't liked Breathing Lessons. And Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant is a book that I have heard a lot about and just not read because I kind of, again, inwardly rolled my eyes every time Ann Tyler came up. This is a book that was on the recommended summer reading list for a high school at the Borders I worked at in northern New Jersey. A lot of people read it and loved it. I've just heard a lot of recommendations from people who loved this book over the years and had not gotten around to reading it. So recently, as I've been thinking of revisiting Ann Tyler and getting ready to reread Breathing Lessons, which now that I've read this, I'm all kind of thinking maybe I want to do in 2024. I haven't really decided yet. But I feel like I would build up to it, though, because Ann Tyler was a Pulitzer Prize finalist 3 times in the 1980s, and the third time was The Charm. That was Breathing Lessons. The first time was Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant. And that kind of ties into why I'm reading this right now, because it lost to The Color Purple. So I'm reading this right now for my Pulitzer Prize deep dive on The Color Purple, because it was a finalist that same year. Then The Accidental Tourist was a finalist in the mid-'80s. I can't remember what it lost to. And then she won for Breathing Lessons. So I feel like I would do the 3 books. Now I have this one down. I need to read The Accidental Tourist, and then I'll revisit Breathing Lessons, because it feels like Breathing Lessons is sort of the culmination of this Pulitzer journey that Ann Tyler was taking. I'm just going to keep doing this the whole video. Anyway, this is a book about a fractured family. And if you know me, you know I love that. I absolutely love that. I really respond to books about that. I mean, go figure. You bring your emotional baggage into books with you, and yeah, so I love books about fractured families and like generational trauma and all of that stuff. And this ticks all of my boxes. And it is really sharply observed. The characters are really interestingly drawn. I admit, I had a very difficult time with the oldest son, Cody. So in the beginning of the book, which I mentioned in the last Friday Reads video, Pearl Tull is now 85. And she thinks she has pneumonia, but she doesn't want to go to the hospital. So it's likely that she is beginning the process of dying. And you can get a bit of a hint of her relationship with her 3 kids from the way the news is handled, or who is caring for her as she is resisting the idea of seeing a doctor. And I didn't know what the next portion of the book was going to be and what format this was going to take. And basically, the book moves back in time. It moves back and forth a little bit and shifts around among the members of the family. The 4 central members of the family. Pearl's husband, the father of the 3 kids, walks out and is not part of their lives, so he's not really part of the story. And unless he pops in the last 40 minutes of the audio, you don't get his perspective. His entire purpose of the book is to be that absence, because there are ways in which the characters sometimes pretend that the absence is not a problem, but it clearly does bother them. There's an absence that has this remarkable presence in their lives, and it's the same in the narrative. It's really cleverly done. It's clever use of negative space is, I guess, what you would say if you were looking at a painting, and it feels the same in the text of this book. And so you have the 3 kids. Cody is the oldest. He's the one that I had the hardest time with because he's kind of inscrutable. He is angry and resentful and always convinced that people are out to get him or treating him unfairly or going to treat him unfairly. And that's a difficult thing to wrap your head around. So for a lot of the book, I was kind of thinking, like, why is he like this? I need an explanation. And then it actually occurred to me just this morning that I know someone in the real world who is like that. And it's inexplicable. So maybe there will be some kind of explanation or revelation, but maybe it's just the way he is. And I'm on board with it now. It was like the only thing about this book that I was really struggling with. Then you have the middle kid, Ezra, who is kind-hearted, accepting, is very bullied by Cody when they are children, and still loves his brother. He really wants the family to be together and is sort of struggling to keep everyone together and in the same place. Like, there's a running joke that he keeps trying to get everyone together for a dinner, and it always ends in disaster they are never able to finish the meal. It's like Mary Tyler Moore throwing a dinner party. If you have ever seen the Mary Tyler Moore show, it just never ends well despite the best intentions. And then you have Jenny, who is the youngest, who is a really interesting character in her own right. They're all really interesting characters. They're all very different. And the ways they handle the things that happen to them are very different. And that is something that I'm very interested in life. And it's so good. I'm really loving it. I will say about at the halfway point, had kind of thought to myself, not much actually happens in this book. There isn't really a plot to speak of. It's just about this family and these people and the ways they are handling the things that have happened to them in life, especially their childhood. It's really about how things that happen to you early in life carry with you and can have ripple effects on the way you develop and the way you interact with other people and all of that stuff in very interesting and fascinating ways. But there isn't really a plot to speak of. And no spoilers, but that actually comes up at the end. Like, that actually is kind of the point, that nothing is really, strictly speaking, happening in a very interesting way. I'm really loving this book a lot. And I can't wait to finish it. I really wanted to hold my Friday reads until I finish, but I can't because I have so many other things I need to accomplish today. Like, I need to finish filming this, edit this, upload it and schedule it for tomorrow, which will be Saturday. And I need to edit the 2 videos that I filmed yesterday and schedule them for Monday and Thursday. So you will be getting 2 videos next week, regardless of anything else that happens. And then hopefully I can figure out what I'm going to do with my Color Purple thing. So like, there's too much I needed to film, but I really wanted to hold so I could talk about this with having finished it. The last 40 minutes of this book is like weighing on me. If I could be listening to it right now, I absolutely would, because I really want to know how it all ties up. And that is the mark of a really good book. So very much looking forward to this. And because I'm not going to be doing a Friday Reads next week, if all goes according to plan, part of me felt really bad not finishing it because it won't get that sort of wrap up in a Friday Reads. However, I'm talking about it a lot here, and it's going to come up in my December wrap up, and I'm really feeling pretty sure it's going to be in my favorite reads of the year, in my top 10. But a lot will depend on what happens in that last 40 minutes of the audio. Really great book. Glad that I revisited Ann Tyler and can't wait to experience more of her work because it's so smart and empathetic in a way. I'm discovering something about myself since Demon Copperhead last year. I really like books and authors that have a sort of empathy for their characters and for the world, and it's something that appeals to me as a reader. So that's Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant. I did start one last time before this video ends. I'm going to yank the hat down. I did start a book in print after I finished The Color Purple. I have not gotten too far into it. I am 24 pages into The Words That Remain by Stenio Gardel, translated by Bruna Dantas Lobato. This jumped out to me when it was on the shortlist for the Translated Fiction Prize at the National Book Award. I didn't mention it at the time because I looked at those lists after I had reacted to the fiction one. And then it jumped out to me as something that seemed interesting, and then it won. And Stenio Gardel and Bruna Dantas Lobato gave speeches at the National Book Awards ceremony, and it really kind of convinced me, like, I need to read this book. So I recommended to my library that they purchase it, and they did. I have a really bad track record with my library because I will recommend that they purchase something, and they don't. And I think the key word here was that it asks if there's anything notable about the book. And the key phrase here was National Book Award winner. I think that's probably how this one got in. It's a very short book, too, so it should be fairly easy to be done with before Christmas, even. It is 145 pages. So, and I'm on page 24, was it? Yeah, 24. So, should be very doable to finish before the weekend, hopefully. Really interesting book so far. So, this is about a man named Raimundo, who had a love affair with his male friend Cicero when they were teenagers. And this went on for 2 years. And eventually they got caught and beaten and separated. You don't know a whole lot about the separation at this point of the book where I'm at. This is all stuff that happens in the first 24 pages or in the description on the back of the book. Raimundo has a letter that he got from Cicero. He is now an old man. He's like 74, I think. It doesn't say. Now at age 71. He's 71. He still has this letter. All these years, he hasn't opened it. He hasn't opened it because he can't read it. He doesn't know how to read. So the book is also grappling with the economics of Brazil over time, because he lived in a farming village where people had to leave school as children and often didn't learn to read. So now at 71, he is attempting to learn to read so he can finally read this letter. Really interesting book. I'm really enjoying the first 24 pages. There's, I was going to say a lot, but not a whole lot. It's 120 pages left to go. So we'll see how that goes. But I did start that. I should be done with it, hopefully, if all goes well, by Christmas. But we shall see. So that is everything I have been doing. Haven't really seen anything interesting this week. I want to see May December, which is now on Netflix, and Maestro, which is now on Netflix. But we'll probably be doing that over the break. And Color Purple will be in theaters next week, so I'll be trying to see that. So I guess I've been saving up all of my watching for then, and focusing on wrapping up the year in books, which is not a bad thing to do. Hi, I actually just finished filming this video and ripped the hat off, and then I remembered that I wanted to quickly note that because I'm going to be having some downtime this past week, I might be slow to respond to comments, if at all. So I'm going to try to keep up with them, but if I don't respond in a timely manner, I apologize. And let me just say for now, happy holidays, and I hope everyone's doing well. So I'd love to hear what you've been up to, what you've been reading, watching, loving, hating. If you have thoughts about anything I've talked about, in the comment section down below. Again, if you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. Otherwise, just, happy holidays, happy end of year. Whatever you celebrate, I hope, or if you celebrate, I hope you are enjoying this time of year and feeling at home and happy. So, as always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.